Do you want to go quickly around the room, say your name and what company you're with? How many people do we have? I can start. I'm Francis. I'm an investor at Two Sigma Ventures, and we invest seed through Series B. Started my career as a data scientist and worked in product, and then was in San Francisco at Highland Capital, Comcast, and then most recently Two Sigma Ventures. Nikhil, do you want to do yours, and then I can point to people?
Yeah, that sounds great. Hey everyone, Nikhil here, general partner at Shasta Ventures, been at the firm for 8 years. Started my career as an entrepreneur in New York, started a company called Artsy back in 2008, which is a marketplace for original art, and then been venture investing since. And maybe we can just go to Tandis next.
Yeah.
First on the screen too? I thought I was just first to me, so I didn't
You're first next on my right.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Tandis. I'm working on a very early stage company. We just raised a small pre-seed round. It is called the Lambie. It's a primary care members club, brick and mortar, and luckily we do not have a location yet.
Emily?
Hi, my name is Emily. I'm currently a student at Penn State, but I'm interning this summer for Clear Sky.
Thanks. What about you, Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I'm founder of Nivello. It's an early stage company that does payments, authentication infrastructure. And yeah, we haven't raised institutional capital yet, so looking to learn more about this.
Yep. Cool. Joe?
Hey, how's it going? I'm Joseph Adra, founder of Infinite Objects. We are a hardware company that's changing how we buy, sell, collect, and value video content. We launched in October strategically in the art sector, but our video print product is cultural and personal and has a lot of different contexts and audiences to apply, both direct to consumer and B2B.
Great. Hey, Lee, how are you?
Hey, it's been a while.
Yes.
Hi, so I'm Lee. I'm the founder and CEO of Confetti. We have a platform that companies use to plan an entire event online, multiple vendors, full customization, really in just a couple of clicks. We've obviously shifted to the virtual world given the situation. We raised just over $2 million led by Comcast Ventures.
Thanks. Scott, what about you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Lichtenstein, co-founder and CEO of Offsite. We're a co-pilot for sales managers, so it uses AI to help sales managers understand what their team is doing and how it's impacting sales outcomes. We raised a pre-seed round at the end of last year, and we're hoping to go out for a seed this year, but TBD now.
Alec.
Hi, Alec Thompson, co-founder and CEO at Riskcast. We're a construction tech space, construction productivity. We went through MVP Labs last year, raised a pre-seed round at the end of the year, and we'll raise our seed round at the end of this year.
Thanks. Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn. I'm founder and CEO of Peachy. We're your one-stop shop for scientifically demonstrated wrinkle prevention. I'm a physician by training. We'll have both a brick and mortar TBD when the launch date is, but we're also doing video consultations as well.
Nice. Awesome. Did I miss anybody? No. Cool. I think this is a Q&A.
Alec? Right.
Sorry, Alec. Sorry, I thought you were.
No, you got me. I'm on both the computer and the phone, so I can be a little bit more mobile.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Like,
Nice. So I think it's a Q&A. So maybe I'll first pause and see if anyone has any specific questions about fundraising. I can just start rambling if someone says, go ahead and ramble, but any specific questions about sort of fundraising in this environment that we can be helpful with?
I can chime in and ask a quick question, not necessarily related to this environment, but it seems like the group is a bit split into people that haven't raised any money yet and people that have raised money. So maybe you can share a little bit about the different kind of rules of the game for both sides of the fence.
Wow.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I know they were talking about this a little bit in the beginning of today. Maybe I'll just start with my quick opinion in this environment, and this is a little bit me riffing. I think to the point people made earlier, I haven't seen anyone do anything really like innovative in how they're pitching and trying to raise money for their company. What I'd say is like, you know, the whole world is A/B testing right now. So break the process. Like the traditional ways of fundraising and us going through diligence should not be and are not the same right now. I have made 2 investments during this environment personally, one larger and one smaller. I might be a little bit biased because we invested in like GitLab, which has 1,500 employees and not a single office, and they're, you know, in doing well in terms of revenue. They've like, you know, built a successful business so far. And so my view is investors are going to have to get with the times and learn how to make big decisions over video, just like GitLab has to make huge hiring decisions over video. So I think the process may go a little bit slower. I think one of the things I think could be cool is to see people show more value up front. So like, you know, for example, some of my B2B companies are having to show more value to customers up front. And I think like the same should be applied here. So whereas a lot of we usually request diligence and ask for diligence lists or data room and things, like you guys should, I think, maybe bring more of that up front and do more early. So I think even things like, you know, chat with my customers and see how they like the product. Like if you have people who will be a management reference for you and your team, I think bring in more of your team to meetings. Like let me meet your top developer and let him talk about the product and why he joined the company. I think those are ways you can sort of break down some of these remote barriers that give people more comfort with like you and your team than you might be able to do in person. Because I think before we could get a sense of like who you are and your culture and your leadership style by just spending time in a room with you. And since we can't do that, I think, you know, bringing other people to be your voice could be hugely valuable here. But, you know, I think that, again, this is sort of me riffing because I haven't seen anyone do this specifically yet. One of the companies I guess sort of did, you know, I had met him once before. I wrote a $6 million check that's unannounced right now into a data processing startup. But, you know, I had only met the founder one time and had never met any of his other teams. I met all his co-founding team online, but then he also brought in like his developers who were like, I joined this company because I faced this problem. And, you know, he was very forthcoming with his whole pipeline and customers who would use it. It was like, talk to all these people. And so I could get over the barrier remotely just because I had so much, you know, other outside signals that I could use to understand his leadership and the product he built and why people liked it. So I don't know, Nikhil, any other ideas or, you know, viewpoints on fundraising in this environment?
I think all of those are really valuable thoughts from Francis. You know, in general, figuring out how to stand out to investors has always been a question of how do you present yourself as an outlier, right? And how does an investor think and get conviction that you are an outlier? Because that's sort of the definition of our job as venture capitalists. And so I think that thinking applies maybe more than ever right now. You know, to Lee's specific question around, you know, this difference for companies that have raised some amount of capital thus far versus the ones that haven't. I think for the ones that have, it is a time where, you know, have as much runway as possible. Don't balloon your fixed costs unless you're one of the few businesses that are seeing dramatic tailwinds from the shifts in behavior at the moment. I think it's just a time to be conservative given the uncertainty. And I think in general, entrepreneurs are going to get judged during this time, during 2020, not by a bunch of up and to the right metrics, but by the decisions that they made during this time and the quality of those decisions. So if you did decide to make a couple of key hires and you unlocked incredible people who suddenly came loose, you know, that's something that people will judge you on during this time. If you had to make a really difficult decision to pivot the company in a different direction, a different go-to-market, to stop physical space, for instance, or marketing via that channel to go unlock, you know, a brand new set of channels, you'll be judged favorably for those types of decisions or unfavorably if you weren't able to tack and change directions. And so I think that's just a general thing to keep in mind. Because I think a lot of investors will give you a pass on up into the right metrics in 2020, just given this environment.
Yeah, maybe maybe I didn't fully understand also the like the concern or question around like if you've raised before and if you haven't raised before. You mean like going back to your current investors, if that's like, you know, thinking about those options versus new investors?
Well, if the question was referred to me, it got cut off for a second.
Oh, I was just saying, what were some of the things that you know, maybe we're curious about the difference specifically in people who've raised and who haven't raised before? Is it like, are you thinking about current investor base and how to approach them, or?
I'm kind of open, but I think that ultimately if there are different rules to the game for people that haven't raised versus people that have raised, is it very similar? Is it very different? What similarities do you see? There wasn't anything necessarily very specific in mind, so you can feel free to kind of chime in where you feel like you can.
I want to just jump in and say, Francis, I appreciate your candor of saying it's the mold's broken. Let it stay broken for a minute. And none of us know the answer to these questions ultimately right now. I kind of like what you rolled through of like more transparency, more points of contact for people to see things, but it's the perfect opportunity for any entrepreneur to be completely creative in their approach. And I don't mean, you know, hanging piñatas from the ceiling or anything, but just, you know, you don't have to follow a pattern today because there are no patterns. So embrace whatever your normal would feel like and bring that to the table. I think it's an amazing opportunity as a founder to do that, because we get, to your point, you know, we get a bit of a pass on some things. And so it's an amazing opportunity to let that kind of out and lead, let that part of you lead more.
Yeah. In general, I've always gravitated towards founders who are super authentic. And my view is if you can't be authentic in this time, then when can you be? Because everyone is dealing with some shit at the moment.
I think
absolutely.
That's
we see everybody's living room.
Yeah, and I think especially again, since some, you know, language comes in different formats. Like one is, you know, body language, and we get a sense of like leadership style through that. But also just I think you know, the point about getting to know you and like authenticity, it's sort of like, I would go maybe deeper than normal, even than maybe some people do this anyways, but if you're, you know, it's like less comfortable to you in an in-person environment, you know, like get personal, like don't be all business. I think like let people see your character come through and talking about whether it's personal experiences or sort of where you're coming from as a founder. I think people sometimes undervalue that. Like a lot of what we're doing at the early stages is assessing team, like who are you, like, you know, what's your attitude and aptitude for approaching building a business, and, you know, can you recruit well? All of that I think has to do with sort of showing like, you know, what drives you and like why you have to build this business and where you're coming from and like what problems you faced before. So I would be more forthcoming with that now than ever.
I know we've heard a few investors today say, you know, this past month has been really crazy and inward looking. Things are starting to calm down a little bit. Is that set against this specter of this potentially going on for like 18 to 24 months? Or is that under the hopeful assumption that like soon things will be sort of back to normal? Or do you anticipate VCs going through like this cyclical situation as we go shut down and reopen again? Or do you think you figured out what your process is going to kind of be?
I think that we're in it for a while. I think not only maybe we think we'll start to go back to normal, but I think that the economy is going to suffer for much longer. And I think that we should expect many aftershocks. So I think you'll have a lot of second order effects and unprecedented shocks are sort of still unfolding. I'm urging my team to like create this new process, the sort of new forms of communication, documentation. How do we do asynchronous communication and investment decisions as a team? And, you know, I can't say, I don't know what every VC is doing. Everyone has a different approach. I think a lot of people are thinking we'll just go back to our regular way of making decisions. I think, you know, I think it's not taking advantage of a really exciting opportunity to change how we work, but B, I think it's a little bit naive because I think we're gonna be in this sort of situation for a while. I don't know, Nikhil, disagree, have other thoughts?
Look, I think as the world opens up, most of us in this room are going to be the last to actually go back to work as normal, because there are so many people who can't do their work from home. And so there's still a number of VCs in China who are working from home. And they expect that they're going to work from home the rest of this year. And I expect I'm going to work from home the rest of this year. And I'm just preparing for that. And so, yeah, I think to your question, Candice, it was just a shock, right? Like we all had to adjust our lives and our work processes to this. I think at this point, we've gotten into the routine now of operating via Zoom and operating entirely virtually. But there's still uncertainty, for the next year. And I don't know, I think it was Andrew in the first panel who said 18 months. Like, I'm being more conservative with my portfolio. I'm thinking about 24 months. I have a few boards with folks at Benchmark and Andreessen Horowitz. Both those firms are counseling founders 36 months. It's part of why you saw Carter do layoffs yesterday, is they actually have a ton of runway, but they're thinking about 36, 48 months of runway on that previous round of financing. So there's a range, there's a real spectrum of aggression to conservatism. I'm probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's even worth, to kind of go back to fundraising, to talk about how your strategy is shifting and how you're managing against that. And I think, I don't know, one of the things I'm seeing is like even just the sales strategy is changing. I think the ways that VCs will look and evaluate and value and put multiples on companies is also going to be dramatically different. Like we don't have to, we can't just slap on a 7x to EBITDA or ARR, for the next couple of years. So what are other things we're going to be looking for? I think it's going to be, somewhat like strength of product, like customer retention. I think even for like traditional enterprise businesses, I think that the way we have traditionally assessed them is going to change. So I think to that point, I would be positioning my company for not just like defensively, how do I get through this time, but like offensively, how am I going to change my company or my go-to-market strategy altogether? Like, am I going to just do self-serve? If I sit on the board of a company called Radar, and we used to have like APIs, that was only in the like big enterprise version of the platform that you could get access to that. Now they're just not seeing appetite for enterprise sort of like setups and integrations. So we're moving totally towards a self-serve model. We're putting more of the value in the APIs and this, team and self-serve version. So, what are the things you can even do with your business now that may impact what the company looks like over the long term?
I'm curious if anyone in the room has an adjustment that they've made in the last month and a half that may be along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak a little bit on that. We're a consumer electronics product. We're certainly not a need to have product, but what we make definitely does bring joy. It does create an opportunity to be creative while you're sitting at home, and it is a physical product. So, you send it to someone that you care about as a gift, and it does become something that they, that you can connect with them. That's not just in an app or on your computer. And so we have done some messaging and done some advertising testing, marketing testing. In general, we're so early still, like I said, we launched late fall, that we haven't actually done a lot of paid marketing, but it is a nice opportunity to be like, hey, we're doing a giveaway. We did a giveaway, like a contest about who could be the most creative. We're going to do a big Mother's Day thing. Send your mother a moving moment that, about a time when you could be with her, because you obviously can't, or many people can't be with mom today. So I think we've definitely embraced the kind of be on the offensive here and think about what can our product mean to people in this time. even though it's not something that everyone needs, it is something that that can raise spirits and that can bring kind of positivity. And so embracing that messaging even more so than before has been, yeah, so far been really fruitful for us.
We've
Yeah.
definitely been experiencing it in brick and mortar. So we were planning to launch with this like giant, fabulous flagship space, which was probably crazy in the first place. And now are planning to open a smaller satellite location first, with the assumption that this first round of users might not be in the office as often as they previously would be. And also kind of shifting what our value proposition is in the way that we market that, and our messaging around less around preventive care and more around we've got you covered and you need a source you can go to if something happens, and we want to be that source for you. So using that shift in consumer psychology.
We definitely launched our self-service tools early. We ramped up our self-service tools that were already kind of on the roadmap. And then we were using this opportunity to strategically hire versus commodity hire. We had to hire planned in March. And instead of more of somebody that was transactionally going to do a function, we were using the opportunity to get somebody that's a little bit more seasoned with a lot more finesse, probably at a pretty good rate for us, able to bring them in and negotiate a better deal on both sides and get somebody that's key early versus somebody that was more transactional would have been helpful, but not as integral.
For us, I've been really focusing on solidifying my distribution partnerships as opposed to the one by one, and we're selling to enterprise, but focusing on that, because as I am going to go out and raise, I want to make sure that like stickiness of the business is clear, and by inking these deals early, I'm hoping that story comes out and yeah, just brings a little less riskiness to the business.
I think we have about 10 minutes left. Any other questions? That doesn't have to be about fundraising if you guys have other things you wanted to talk about.
I do have a fundraising specific question. So we did a pre-seed last June, and according to our roadmap, we were planning on starting our seed round outreach for that this month. Obviously, things are a little bit slower, and we're adapting in terms of that, the fundraising strategy. But I have a general question that, so our pre-seed did include a few institutional investments that, VCs who focus on early stage, and most of them already hit, and this is, I've had conversations with everyone, obviously, very frequently in the last few months. And, the idea of them participating in the seed round is totally on the table with multiple of them. But I'm curious, what are the expectations? Like when I go to a new conversation and they ask me, okay, so who from your last round is participating in this round? What are the expectations around that? Like, even if they've hit their goals, like some of my investors were like, our model is we want to own 10% in the pre-seed stage. And so we're going to write a check for whatever that means at your pre-seed valuation. And so they've hit their kind of target. Some of those still might put in more, but others might not. And I'm wondering, does that like raise red flags when you've got investors who don't participate in the following round, or is that to be expected? Like what are the expectations there?
I think it depends on the investor, sort of their history, and sort of like where your business is at. Like, is it because are they not participating because that's just not really their strategy? Like, some people that only write checks into the first round, or and I guess I would say I almost would like try to not focus on that at all, because it's something you can't control. And I think I would just focus a lot more on creating the sort of FOMO around the round and the deal to get people sort of, moving quickly and being excited about the company, and focus just a lot more on the story and the messaging. I think if it's a good business, people, shouldn't care either way. Like they should think, this is an opportunity for me to get in now, like fast before the other people. Or maybe they, maybe in this particular time, it's because those companies are just super focused on, or not companies, investors are super focused on their portfolio. So I think, you know, I'd say I guess my advice would just be to not stress about it too much and stress a lot more about the story and your strategy for getting new investors in.
Yeah, I think Matt's advice is good advice. I mean, at the end of the day, the job when you go out to fundraise is to find someone who believes in you and believes in the company. And on the list of why they're going to believe or not believe, what your existing investors are doing should be low on that list. Pandemic, no pandemic, like in whatever environment. And so I think if you get asked that question, you just have a transparent answer around what you expect and you move on. And again, it shouldn't affect, you know, your fundraise either way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, this is not a concern. It's not at all a focus of mine. I'm just very curious because this is the first time I'm doing a second round. And so that kind of relationship with my existing folks is very important to me. And we, you know, I try to keep in contact in all sorts of ways. And yeah, it's more of a curiosity thing getting your input on it. Thank you.
I mean, I think, by the way, you can communicate that you're having those, if you're going out and meeting a new investor for the first time, you can say, you know, I do expect people will be, my current investors will be a part of this round, and we're still working out like their allocation. So I'm not sure, you know, exactly how much will be open for the new investor. You know, you can play the story a little bit that way, but I don't think you have to have a straight answer either when you're going out to fundraise. Like it's normal for that sort of participation to move a little bit, you know, as you're sort of getting to the final, you know, capital call stage.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any questions on anyone's minds that we can quickly try to answer for you?
Are you guys extremely sick of Corona small talk at the beginning of pitches or meetings or calls? Do you wish people would stop being like, oh, where are you? Are you working from home, when you obviously are? Or do you feel like it's just part of the moment?
I feel like it's just part of the moment a little bit, right? Like, you know, and I think it's okay. I mean, I think I'll become sick of it probably in a month, maybe 2 months. But the reality is we're all going, again, we're all dealing with new and uncertain things right now. And I think it's totally fine. If that's what's on your mind at the beginning, it's totally fine to talk about it.
Right.
I will just say, you know, one interesting thing over the last couple of weeks has been how dramatically some marketing channels have decreased in price. And so something that's on my mind, just for some of you who are building consumer companies, or even if you're an enterprise business, might dabble in a little bit of A/B testing, experimentation with digital channels. This is the best time that I've seen in the last 6 years to do that. You know, a number of my companies have seen Facebook, Google CPMs go down by 50% in the last 2 weeks. TV is down like 80% from a month ago. And there's a lot of eyeballs, as probably all of you can empathize with on TV right now. So, you know, I have a number of portfolio companies: The Farmer's Dog, Literati, Imperfect Foods, Class Dojo, a number in collaboration software that are experimenting more than ever with digital channels.
Yeah, I would echo that. Also, I think maybe one counterpoint is not counterpoint, but thing to think about is why it's cheaper. So, like for example, TV I think is great right now, and I think part of the reason it's gone down is because a lot of the big guys are slashing their marketing budgets, like airlines and GM and G, and so I think that's really interesting. But one of the things, with like podcasts, for example, like the listenership has gone down. So, and actually same with Instagram. I think, there are new types of channels that I think are interesting to market that maybe you wouldn't have considered before. I think even for like enterprise businesses, I would consider like the YouTube and the TV. I think sometimes B2B companies underestimate that as a channel, but yeah, I've been saying like Strava has gone way up in terms of people that are actively using Strava right now. So it's like, maybe people like the FOMO doesn't exist as much on Instagram right now. So like where are these other places people are putting their eyeballs? Is it on games, So that's a good point though. Curious, actually, Nikhil, I'm curious how you have advised people on hiring.
In general, to not go crazy on it during this time, to not balloon fixed costs because we just don't know. But I have a number of searches. In fact, my call in 50 minutes is with a VP product candidate at one of my companies that's been trying to hire a VP product for a while. Suddenly we have like 5 really high quality folks in the pipeline. And so I think that there's certain high impact hires that are suddenly possible in the environment because of a number of folks coming loose. And this is a great time to go make them.
Yep, totally. If you guys haven't checked it out, what's called Silver Linings is a website that's getting like a lot of the good tech talent to, say that their whole team has been slashed and are interested. So there's some kind of cool research